It was one of those evenings that made Emily question her own decisions, the kind where the glow of the restaurant lights couldn't outshine the dull ache in her chest. She sat at the corner table, glancing at her phone for the 5th time, silently wishing her best friend hadn't convinced her to go on this blind date. "You've been alone too long," her friend had said. "Just one dinner, and if it's bad, you can leave," Emily sighed, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear as the waiter poured her a glass of water. She had built a life around routines: work, home, solitude, and had convinced herself that was enough. Love had been a wound she had stitched up years ago, vowing never to tear it open again. But here she was, wearing her favorite maroon dress, hoping maybe, just maybe, the universe wasn't done surprising her. Then the door opened, and in walked a man who didn't fit the description her friend had given at all. He wasn't polished or overly confident like the men she'd met before. Instead, there was a quiet strength about him. He wore a simple grey shirt, his hair slightly messy, and his eyes, deep, kind, searching, seemed to hold a storm and a calm at once. "Emily?" he asked softly, and she nodded. His name was Daniel, a single father, and the moment he sat down, Emily could feel his nervousness mirror her own. They talked, hesitantly at first, about everything and nothing: work, life, coffee, small-town dreams. But something about him was different. There was sincerity in his every word, the kind that wasn't rehearsed or trying to impress. He told her about his daughter Lily, 5 years old, full of questions and crayons, the light of his world. The more he spoke, the more Emily found herself drawn in, her heart betraying the walls she'd built. Yet, midway through dinner, she felt the familiar fear creep in. He was too good, too genuine, too perfect for someone like her, she thought. When he excused himself to take a call, she glanced toward the window, snow falling softly outside, and whispered to herself, "I should go. Old habits die hard." And running before she got hurt had always been hers. But before she could gather her purse, Daniel returned, smiling awkwardly. "Sorry, that was Lily," he said. "She wanted to tell me she finished drawing something for me." Emily smiled faintly, trying to shake off the tension, and the night continued with laughter, shy smiles and stories about loss, hope and second chances. By the end, he offered to walk her to her car, and under the glowing streetlights, he thanked her for coming. "It's been a long time since I felt comfortable with someone," he admitted, and that honesty left a mark on her heart. But even as she drove home, Emily convinced herself it was just one night, nothing more. The next morning, she decided not to reply when he texted, "Had a wonderful time. Hope to see you again." She told herself it was better that way. She had her life figured out, and letting anyone in would only complicate it. Days passed. Work consumed her. But Daniel's kind eyes lingered in her memory. His laughter replayed in the quiet moments. One snowy Saturday, she found herself sitting in the same cafe where they had met, trying to write, but every sound, every clink of a spoon, every burst of laughter reminded her of him. That's when the doorbell chimed and a little girl ran in, curls bouncing, her voice bright and pure. "Daddy, Daddy!" she called, and Emily froze when she saw Daniel walk in behind her. Their eyes met, a moment stretching into eternity. Lily, unaware of the tension, ran up to Emily's table and stopped, staring at her with innocent curiosity. And then, with the kind of certainty only children have, she said the words that would change everything. "You're the one from Daddy's story." The cafe went silent around them. Daniel's expression turned to shock. Emily's heart skipped, and time seemed to hold its breath. She didn't know yet what story Lily meant, but in that instant, something deep within her told her this wasn't coincidence. It was destiny taking a second chance. Emily stared at the little girl, her mind struggling to piece together what she had just heard. Daniel quickly knelt beside his daughter, whispering, "Lily, sweetheart, what do you mean?" But the child's face lit up as she spoke, her voice bright and certain. "You said once that when you met Mommy in your dreams, she had golden hair and a red dress. and she made you smile again after you forgot how. The cafe went completely still. Emily's breath caught, and Daniel's eyes softened with something she couldn't define, sorrow or maybe fate. He looked at Emily like the universe had just played a cruel or beautiful trick on him. I told her bedtime stories sometimes, he explained, his voice low. About someone I used to imagine meeting one day, someone kind, who would see me for who I am. Emily didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Here was a man who had unknowingly dreamed of her before they even met, and a little girl who believed she was the one meant for her father. She knelt down to Lily's level, her heart melting as the girl reached out and handed her a folded drawing from her tiny backpack. "This is you and Daddy," Lily said. "See? You're smiling." Emily opened it. 2 stick figures under a house, holding hands, surrounded by hearts and a bright sun. For the first time in years, tears stung her eyes, not from pain, but from something far deeper, a tenderness she had long buried. Daniel stood silently, watching her reaction. "She draws everyone she meets," he said quietly. "But she's never drawn someone like that before." Emily smiled weakly. "Maybe she just has a good imagination." Daniel looked down, his voice soft but honest. Or maybe she sees what I was too scared to hope for." The moment hung between them like fragile glass, filled with unspoken emotions neither dared to name. The snow outside thickened, painting the world in white silence, and Emily realized she didn't want to run anymore. The 3 of them sat together, an unlikely trio brought together by a twist of fate. Over hot cocoa and laughter, the hours slipped away. Lily told stories about her toys, about how she missed her mom, and how she sometimes wished her dad would smile more. Emily listened, each word piercing her heart, until she finally asked softly, "What happened to her?" Daniel looked out the window for a long time before answering. "Lily's mom passed away 3 years ago. Since then it's just been us. I promised I'd give her every happiness I could, even if it meant never falling in love again." His honesty broke something inside. "Emily, and now?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Now I'm not so sure. That night changed everything. What began as a blind date, she regretted turned into something she couldn't forget." In the weeks that followed, Daniel and Emily began to meet more often. Walks in the park with Lily, dinners at home filled with laughter and burnt pancakes, late-night talks about dreams they'd long abandoned. Slowly, piece by piece, Emily found herself healing in ways she hadn't thought possible. She realized love didn't always arrive with fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes it walked in quietly, holding a child's hand and saying, "You're the one from Daddy's story." Months later, on a snowy evening much like the one they first met, Daniel took her back to that same cafe. The lights glowed golden again, and Lily sat beside them, drawing with crayons. Daniel looked at Emily with that same calm sincerity and said, "I used to think my story was finished, but then you walked in and gave it a new beginning." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring. "Emily, will you help me finish the story Lily started?" Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, unable to speak. Lily squealed, hugging them both, shouting, "Now it's just like my picture!" The world outside melted into a blur of snow and light as Emily realized she hadn't just found love. She had found home, and sometimes the stories we think are endings are just beginnings in disguise.